The European Union uses the civil protection mechanism to provide aid to Ukraine after Russia blasted the Kakhovka HPP dam. The first contributions were made by Germany, Austria and Lithuania. Germany offered 5,000 filters and 56 generators. Austria handed over 20 water tanks and 10 drilling pumps. In addition, Lithuania and Germany also offered the tents, the beds and blankets. The disaster occurred on the territory of Ukraine, but its consequences will surely have a negative impact on many countries. So it is world's problem now. Pollution of the Black Sea, climate change, food security, etc., etc. So my first question is to you as a communication expert. How would you, Mr. Smith, assess the actions of correspondent Ukrainian of the old Ukrainian government and the correspondent institutions in terms of delivering the message to the world? What are the terrible consequences of this horrific catastrophe, terroristic act made by Russia?
Well, you know, Henry, the Ukrainian people and government are under the greatest pressure at the moment. They are suffering what is a genocidal war from a criminal government in the Kremlin, which wishes to wipe out Ukrainian identity. So to have to deal with this huge tragedy on both a human and an environmental scale for Ukraine in the middle of that war is just a massive challenge. And I think that's very clearly why Russia did this. Russia is a country that has, and the Kremlin and Putin has no hesitation in murdering, tens of thousands of innocent people. They have been doing this in Ukraine for the last 16 months, carrying out genocide, and we know that they have done this in Syria and before in Chechnya, where they virtually wiped whole cities off the face of the map, as unfortunately they have done with great cities like Mariupol in the last 16 months. So this has been a great challenge for Ukraine. I think from what I have seen, the Ukrainians have responded superbly to this. The communication has been very, very difficult, I think, because, of course, Russia, which lies on an industrial scale, immediately claimed that it was the Ukrainians themselves who blew up the dam. One, how could they possibly do that? And two, why would a country that fights to protect its own people inflict such a disaster? It has no credibility whatsoever.
A wonderful saying, an industrial scale of lies. Indeed, that's what Russia does. Reconstruction of the Kakhovka hydroelectric power plant will last for 5 years and will cost up $1-2 billion. It was stated by the General Director of Ukrhydroenergo, Igor Sirota. It is next to impossible for us, the country at war, to find these resources for itself. The complete repair of this HPP will take place after its situation on the front stabilizes, after Ukraine defeats the enemy, said Alexei Kuleba, deputy head of the Office of the President of Ukraine, in a comment to Radio Liberty. We understand it is necessary to put as much pressure on Moscow as possible in order to do many things, make them withdraw their troops from our land, in order to counter their propaganda, etc., etc. Is there a way to create such a pressure using a communication, again, tool, some technology? And is it possible after all?
Well, before, I think at such a stage as the war is won, and that is, we are still a long way off that. There will be many, many hundreds of billions of dollars available for the reconstruction of Ukraine, not just for the dam, but for the dam in particular, because we can talk about this has a huge effect on the Ukrainian economy. It has been estimated that the destruction of this dam will reduce Ukrainian wheat and grain production by up to 10% in the coming years. It will, possibly it could turn the Crimean Peninsula, which Ukraine is determined to take back because Crimea is part of Ukraine. It has the potential to turn Crimea into a desert. So there is so much. So to get back to your question, first the war must be won. To win the war, that starts with the diplomatic efforts, but also the communication at every level, using television, using radio, using social media, using anywhere we can influence decision makers. But what I must say is, as much support as the West is giving, it is too little, and it is tending to come too late. We have finally, after 16 months this year, started to give Ukraine all of the heavy weapons that they have been crying out for from the start of this war. This is long-range artillery. We saw Britain give Storm Shadow, which is really important. Right. The battle tanks. We finally saw the Germans agree to release the Leopard tanks, which Ukraine has been asking for. And again, I have got to say, Great Britain has played a huge role in unlocking that logjam with the donation earlier this year, initially of 14 of our Challenger tanks. And the Americans are also giving a small number, I think about 31 Abrams tanks. But this is all coming too late. Only 2 weeks ago, President Biden finally agreed that F-16 modern fighter jets could be given to Ukraine. This will still take some time for those fighter jets to get into the hands of Ukrainian pilots, and for Ukrainian pilots and ground crews to be trained not just to fly these very complex jets, but to maintain them as well. Absolutely. I have got to say that all of these things should have been done earlier, but it is better late than never. So the first imperative is that Ukraine must be helped to win this war and drive Russia off Ukrainian land, because until that happens, and until there are real security guarantees for Ukraine, the reconstruction cannot happen.